Georgia, Mr. Scott, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I too rise to talk a little bit about the national debt and accusations that have been made against my colleagues in the House Republican Conference. I've listened as a couple of the colleagues from the Democratic side have accused us of playing chicken and gambling, and have said they're glad that we're going to be educated on the impacts of a default on the debt. And I'll tell you, I agree with a lot of the consequences that have been outlined about the default. What I want my colleagues to recognize on the other side of the aisle is that 2 days before Christmas, a bill passed this House, 4,126 pages. 4,126 pages, spent $1.7 trillion. That bill was negotiated among four people: Speaker Pelosi, Senator Schumer, Majority Leader Schumer, President Biden, and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Now, when President Biden signed the bill on December the 30th, what I want my colleagues to know is that we had already hit the debt limit on December the 30th. I've got in my hand the daily Treasury report dated December 30th of 2022. The national debt, subject to the limit, $31,347 billion. $31,347 billion. The limit, $31,381 billion. Now, technically, we were 99.89% of the way to the debt limit. For all practical purposes, if you spent 99.89% of the limit on your credit card, you're there. Now, the four people who negotiated it had to know that we were less than 0.1% away from hitting the debt limit the day that piece of legislation was signed. And all they had to do in that 4,000-page omnibus bill was write one sentence to change the debt limit to what it would have taken to fund their omnibus bill. One sentence would have changed the debt limit in this country, and we wouldn't be having discussions we're having today about default. But they didn't do that. Now, on January the 19th was 20 days after that bill was signed. 20 days after the bill was signed, and now they're accusing House Republicans of being fiscally demented and not paying attention and playing chicken and gambling with America's future. The four people who negotiated that deal had four choices. They could have passed a continuing resolution with a debt limit included. They could have passed a continuing resolution without the debt limit. They could have passed an omnibus bill and included the debt limit, or they could have passed an omnibus bill and not included the debt limit. There was only one of those choices that would have led to the current situation that everybody points the finger at House Republicans and says you're gambling with. And the one choice that led to the current situation is an omnibus bill without the debt limit included. And guess what those four with 160 years of political experience chose? They chose the one that would lead to the current situation. You could have included the debt limit in the piece of legislation that you adopted and was signed on December the 30th. You chose not to. You don't need to point the finger at Republicans and say, we're gambling, we're playing chicken. The fact of the matter is, the four people who negotiated the omnibus bill knew exactly what they were doing. This crisis was intentionally created, and it's something that we're going to have to work together to get out of. We have $32 trillion in debt. In 2019, we had $21 trillion. We can't keep running a $2 trillion deficit every year. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.